Hey, today I want to talk to you about active listening. So we're going to do the three-part in the four-part series, video series here, about how to have a difficult conversation. I mean, really, who doesn't need to have this video in their life? We all deal with conflict, and when it really gets difficult is when our emotions take over and we are no longer thinking clearly. So you can have all the skill in the world, but unless you know how to manage your emotions, we're all human and we have conflict, so we got to learn how to deal with it. Today we're going to be talking about active listening, and this is, like I said, the third part in this series. So the first two sections we talked about knowing who you are and what you're going to bring into this conversation and how you're going to bring it in. Biases, beliefs, fallacies and logic, basically just principles that how you're forming your opinions and your perspectives, and how your scope of reality, how you see the world, is coming into those conversations. So that's the first part. Second part is going to be preparing. So, it's pretty basic, but the more that you put into it, the more you're going to get out of it. And especially if your goal is, hey, I want to maintain a positive relationship with this person afterwards, despite the fact that we might disagree on everything. The point is preserving the relationship, if that is your intention, of course. So preparing is the second one. And then for this one, third is active listening. And this, in my opinion, is the most important part, because listening is a skill that I feel is very underdeveloped and very underutilized in our culture and society. Listening can be one of the most powerful things you can do when you're having a conversation like this. So let's just talk about the basics, the foundations of what listening is, right? So you've got a difference between listening and hearing. And hearing is referred to as the auditory input that goes into our ears, our brain processes it, and then we know what's going on outside in our environment. Now, listening takes that a step further, and what it does is it takes that auditory input and it then applies deeper meaning to what you're hearing. Okay? So, for example, you're in a conversation with somebody. Now, you can feign that you're listening and you can hear the input and you know that they're talking to you, but you're really not taking in what they're saying. You're just kind of allowing the information to wash over you, I guess would be a way to put it. Whereas listening would be being fully present, fully engaged with what they're saying. There is a lot of information that comes through when a person talks, and it doesn't matter what they're talking about. When a person is expressing themselves, there's basically three ways that they are communicating to you all at once. One is the words that they're saying, or the content. Two is going to be the nonverbal communication, which, if you haven't heard by now, it is definitely one of the most it's the biggest way that people get information. They relay information to their listener is through nonverbals. Then the other one would be the emotion that is charging their content. So three basic ways. So we've got verbal, nonverbal, and emotions. So that we could go into a little bit more. I'm not going to go into that today. What I would like, now that we've covered the foundations of what active listening is and the importance of it. If you can actively listen when you're in a difficult conversation, that means that you have control over your own emotions and you are able to fully engage, which is important for the outcome that you want. So what I want to do in this video is to talk about an exercise that I personally experienced, and it is probably one of The top 3 reasons why I am absolutely in love with conflict management. And believe me, I ask myself this question all the time. Why do I do this? Why do I do what I do? But I guess I'm just built that way. I don't know. Okay. When I first came across this, I was doing an exercise with a group of people to help understand the 3 elements that go into receiving information and sending information during a conversation. So when a speaker and a listener are in a conversation, the sender is sending the information and the receiver is receiving that information, and vice versa. That's usually a conversation back and forth, right? So in this exercise, we had, I think 6 people. One person was speaking, one person was listening for content only. Their job was to listen to the information and enough to where after the story was done, they would have to relay or summarize what they heard, just content. The next person their sole job was to look at the nonverbals. So again, they listened to the speaker, they observed only the nonverbal that was being communicated, and then after the speaker was done, then they would relay what they saw from the nonverbals. The third listener was in charge of watching for emotions, for emotional content being delivered. So again, after the speaker was done, they would relay back to them what they picked up emotionally from the speaker. And then the other person there was timekeeper. So we had this all planned out, this whole demonstration. So 5 people. Now, my personal experience with this was during the role that I held was looking for the emotions that the person was talking about or talking with. And honestly, I couldn't even tell you the content of what she was saying. I believe it was something along the lines of like a story about her and her husband and their weekend and what they did on their weekend. But I can tell you the emotions that she was portraying. It was everything from joy, happiness, frustration, sadness. I mean, it felt like I got the full gamut of emotions. And there was a moment in this exercise where I was simply observing and absorbing the emotions that I was hearing or receiving from her. And I swear, I fell in love with her personality in that moment. And it was this aha moment, this awakening that I had, like, if this can happen simply by listening to a person's story about their weekend, then what else how else can I apply this? What else can I learn from people? So that was one of the moments that I fell in conflict management or conflict resolution. So today I'm telling you that exercise so that maybe you can play with it, practice on your own, and you don't have to tell anybody. But perhaps when you're going throughout your day and you're listening to people talk, you can start practicing, looking for just their content. What are they telling me? What information can I retain in order to repeat back to them if I had to really absorb what they're saying and the data and the input and the words, the tone, the texture of everything that they're saying. You could also just look at people's nonverbals. I mean, who doesn't like to observe people watching? I mean, that's one of the greatest pastimes, right? So watching people from afar and looking at their nonverbal, what they're communicating nonverbally. And then again, emotions. When you're speaking to somebody, it doesn't matter if it's a stranger, you could just focus on their emotions. Now, hopefully you remember what they're saying as well, because if they're talking to you, they're trying to tell you something. But something to play with, great practice exercise. And this is really going to help you with learning to actively listen, engaging, and not just zoning out, because that's another thing that we all are guilty of, is not being present, zoning out, not paying attention to what they're saying, and only giving half of what you could give. And trust me, people know when you're not paying attention. It's really, really easy. It's just a slight flicker, it's a slight dulling of their eyes, and people know that you are not fully engaged with what they're saying. So practicing how to actively listen is going to be incredible, not only for your personal relationships, but it's going to help you develop the skills necessary to have difficult conversations with people. And stay present. That's what it's all about. Staying present, controlling your mind so that you can be there and fully engaged, being aware of your own emotional response, again, so you can be fully engaged, okay? So that's all I'm going to talk about in regards to active listening on this video. I hope you enjoy it. If you haven't checked out the other ones, go ahead. There's probably going to be a link somewhere attached to this video. You can go back and peruse those and, stay in touch. I have my website information will be included, all the social media stuff, and YouTube subscription if you wish. So stay in touch. I look forward to seeing you next time. Take care.